The anomaly appeared on a Tuesday. Dr. Elena Reyes stared at her monitor, coffee forgotten as she analyzed the signal pattern for the 5th time. For 3 days, every major radio telescope on Earth had been picking up the same inexplicable interference, a mathematical sequence too perfect to be natural, too complex to be coincidental. "It's definitely artificial," she muttered to her colleague, Dr. Kai Zhang, "and definitely not from Earth." Before Zhang could respond, their laboratory's emergency alert system blared to life. Outside, the sky above the Chilean observatory darkened as an immense object moved into low orbit, sleek, asymmetrical, and undeniably not human in design. 12 hours later, the United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session as similar vessels appeared over major cities worldwide. Military forces mobilized, panic erupted in streets, and religious leaders proclaimed everything from apocalypse to salvation. But the vessels made no aggressive moves. Instead, they'd broadcast a single message in perfect English and 26 other human languages. "We are the Galactic Concordat. We come seeking alliance against mutual extinction." The visitors called themselves the Voxlith, crystalline beings that communicated through light pulses, and they served as ambassadors for the Concordat, a coalition of 17 spacefaring species. Their message was grim. A brutal empire known as the Krathul was methodically consuming the galaxy, enslaving or exterminating all in their path. "Your world lies directly in their expansion corridor," the Voxlith ambassador explained to the hastily assembled human delegation. Its crystalline form pulsed with somber blues as it displayed holographic images of worlds reduced to molten slag. The Krathul tolerate no independent civilizations. Dr. Reyes, included in the delegation for her xenolinguistic expertise, noticed the subtle dismissive harmonics in the ambassador's speech patterns. "You don't think we can help you," she stated bluntly. "You think we're too primitive." The ambassador's form briefly flickered with surprise purple. "Your technology is indeed rudimentary, but your species possesses something we have observed in no other: an irrational persistence in the face of certain defeat. The Krathul cannot comprehend this trait. It confuses them." The world's leaders debated for 48 tense hours, while Dr. Rice and her team worked feverishly to understand the extensive data the Concordat provided about their enemy. What she discovered chilled her. The Krathul weren't just conquerors. They were collectors, preserving single specimens of each defeated species in vast biological archives before engineering extinction events. When Earth's unified response finally came, tentative agreement to join the Concordat's defense, military commanders received their first tactical briefings on Krathul warfare methodology. General Wong, Earth's most decorated strategist, emerged from the meeting ashen-faced. "They've never lost a campaign," he whispered to the waiting world leaders. "Not one." The words hung in the air as Earth's orbital sensors detected the first Krathul scout ships entering the solar system. Humanity's trial by fire had begun. Commander Jackson Wei had never seen anything so beautiful and terrifying as the swirling nebula before him. From the bridge of the UES Tenacity, Earth's first true interstellar warship, he watched as his fleet of 12 vessels took formation alongside the elegant Concordat ships. 6 months of frantic preparation had transformed humanity's military capabilities. Earth vessels now bristled with retrofitted alien technology, only half understood by their engineers. The crews had trained relentlessly, but Wei knew the truth. They were sacrificial lambs in the Concordat's desperate strategy. Concordat Command advises standard defensive formation, his communications officer reported. Wei studied the tactical display. "Negative. Inform them we'll be implementing Earth Protocol Theta." The Voxlith commander's response came immediately. "Unacceptable. Follow established doctrine." Wei smiled thinly. "Respectfully, we'll defend in our own way." Before the argument could escalate, proximity alarms screamed to life. Reality itself seemed to tear open as 5 Krathul warships emerged from hyperspace. Massive, obsidian structures with angular protrusions that defied human architectural understanding. All vessels, scatter and implement deception protocols. Way ordered. The Concordat fleet maintained their perfect formation as the human vessels broke into apparently chaotic patterns. The Krathul opened fire, lances of energy that shredded through 3 Concordat ships instantly. They're following engagement algorithms. Dr. Raya's voice came through Wei's secure channel from her post on Earth. Their tactics are mathematically optimal against conventional formations. Wei nodded. Then let's be unconventional. The Tenacity suddenly cut engines and went dark, appearing disabled. 2 other Earth vessels did the same while the remainder executed evasive maneuvers that seemed random but followed carefully planned sequences. The Krathul, confronted with behavior their battle computers couldn't categorize, hesitated fractionally. It was enough. The disabled ships suddenly powered up, unleashing experimental weapons developed from Dr. Raya's analysis of Krathul technical transmissions. The energy pulses penetrated Krathul shields calibrated against conventional weapons. 1 enemy vessel erupted in silent flame. How is this possible? The Voxelith commander demanded, its crystalline form pulsing with agitated frequencies. Wei had no time to respond. The Krathul flagship targeted the Tenacity, its weapons capacitors glowing with building energy. Evacuate non-essential personnel, Wei ordered calmly. Prepare for collision protocol. His executive officer paled. Sir, that's not. It's exactly what they won't expect. Wei interrupted, setting the final coordinates himself. The Tenacity accelerated directly toward the charging Krathul weapon array. At the last possible moment, Wei ordered the experimental reactor to overload. The electromagnetic pulse that erupted disabled both vessels. But while the Tenacity's crew had prepared, the Krathul were caught completely off guard. The battle ended with unprecedented results. 3 Krathul ships destroyed, 2 retreating, and only half the Concordat human fleet lost. A tactical victory. As Wei was retrieved from his escape pod, his communication system received an emergency transmission from Earth. Long-range sensors had detected a massive Krathul armada changing course, directly toward the Sol system. His small victory hadn't deterred the enemy. It had enraged them. They came with the dawn. The Krathul armada darkened Earth's skies like an artificial eclipse, hundreds of obsidian warships arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Their first assault was methodical and overwhelming, targeting military installations, power grids, and communication centers with surgical precision. Sydney fell within hours. Moscow followed by nightfall. The orbital defense platforms that Earth had hastily constructed with Concordat technology were swept aside like cobwebs. In an underground facility beneath the ruins of Geneva, Dr. Elena Reyes worked frantically, surrounded by screens displaying intercepted Krathul communications. Her eyes were bloodshot from sleepless nights, but her mind remained razor-sharp. "There's something here," she muttered, highlighting patterns in the alien transmissions. Their language contains no equivalent for improvisation. Every order follows preset protocols. A distant explosion rocked the facility, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. "Fascinating observation, Doctor," General Wang replied dryly. "But unless it can stop orbital bombardment, I'm not sure how it helps us." Reyes pointed to her analysis. "Don't you see? They can't adapt to the unexpected. That's why Commander Wei's tactics worked." Before Huang could respond, the emergency channel activated. The haggard face of Commander Wei appeared on screen. "I've made it to Buenos Aires with the survivors from the Tenacity," he reported. "The Krathul ground forces are deploying in standard conquest formation, just as the Concordat data predicted." What the Krathul hadn't predicted was humanity's response. In Paris, subway workers transformed underground tunnels into ambush zones using jury-rigged alien technology. In Lagos, civilians created decentralized mesh networks to maintain communications after satellites fell. In Tokyo, engineers modified everyday devices into jammers that confused Krathul targeting systems. Supreme Executor Vexthal, observing from his command ship, felt an unfamiliar sensation as reports flooded in. Confusion. The conquest of Earth should have been routine. Instead, his ground forces reported bewildering resistance tactics. Humans used their intimate knowledge of terrain to devastating effect. They adapted craft hull technology with inexplicable speed. Most disturbing of all, they continued fighting when all mathematical models indicated they should surrender. Their resistance defies logic. He hissed to his war council, his iridescent scales darkening with frustration. They must understand their defeat is inevitable. Meanwhile, in the Himalayan mountains, the remnants of Earth's leadership gathered in a hidden facility carved into the rock. Representatives from every surviving nation viewed Dr. Rai's presentation with growing hope. The Krafel have conquered countless worlds because species behave predictably under duress, she explained. But humans don't. We become more creative, more determined, more unified when pushed to the brink. She displayed her analysis of Krafel communications. They have no word for improvisation. Their entire strategy relies on overwhelming force applied according to rigid protocols. This fundamental difference might be the key to our survival. As she spoke, reports arrived from every continent. After 3 weeks of what should have been a straightforward conquest, the Krafel controlled less than 30% of Earth's surface. The first seeds of doubt appeared in Vex et al.'s calculating mind. These humans were problematic. Supreme Executor Vex et al.'s ultimatum echoed across every functioning communication device on Earth. Surrender within one planetary rotation, or face complete biospheric sterilization. The Krafel commander's holographic image towered over ruined cities worldwide, his voice translated into all major languages. His iridescent scales shimmered with cold authority as he continued, "Your resistance, while noteworthy, is ultimately futile. Choose survival through submission." In the Himalayan Command Center, Earth's remaining leaders debated for precisely 17 minutes before reaching unanimous consensus. Their response, transmitted on all frequencies, was simple: humanity does not surrender. Vex Thal received this message with genuine bewilderment. His species had conquered 16 civilizations, and all had eventually capitulated when faced with extinction. This defiance contradicted every behavioral model in Krafel conquest doctrine. Meanwhile, Commander Jackson Wei knelt in the mud outside Vancouver, studying the massive Krafel command ship hovering above the devastated city. Around him gathered 30 soldiers from a dozen nations, the most elite survivors Earth had to offer. The Concordat intel was correct, he told them, lowering his tactical binoculars. Their ventral access ports cycle every 14 minutes precisely. A Russian Special Forces operator shook her head. "Even if we time it perfectly, the internal security will detect us immediately." Wei smiled grimly. "Not if Dr. Rai's countermeasures work." 6 hours earlier, Dr. Rai's had briefed Wyatt on her completed analysis of Krafel communication patterns. She had identified specific harmonic frequencies that confused their neural processing, the equivalent of linguistic blind spots. Their brains literally cannot process information presented in these patterns, she explained, handing him a device that looked cobbled together from Earth and alien technology. "It won't work forever, but it should buy you enough time." The infiltration began at midnight. Using captured Krafel transports and Rai's countermeasure devices, Wei's team penetrated the massive vessel's outer defenses. When encountered, the human soldiers spoke using carefully constructed phrases that exploited the linguistic weaknesses Rai's had discovered. The effect was immediate. Krafel guards hesitated, their neural processes temporarily disrupted by communication patterns their brains couldn't categorize. Those precious seconds were all Wei's team needed. Fighting through the labyrinthine ship, they'd reached the central data core. As the team downloaded critical intelligence on Krafel fleet movements and technology, Wei planted charges at key structural points. Their escape was chaos, alarms blaring, weapons fire, and the ship's massive systems failing around them as the charges detonated. Only 19 of the original 30 made it to the extraction point. But they had succeeded. For the first time in recorded history, a Krathful command vessel had been successfully infiltrated and damaged. When Vexthal received reports of the attack, something unprecedented happened. The Supreme Executor, designed for perfect emotional control, experienced rage. These humans didn't just resist. They struck back. They improvised. They adapted. In the Himalayan Command Center, Dr. Reyes analyzed the stolen data, her eyes widening. "This changes everything," she whispered. The Krathful weren't invincible. And now, humanity had the information they needed to prove it. 6 months of relentless warfare had transformed Earth into an apocalyptic battlefield. Cities lay in ruins, continents bore scars visible from orbit, and billions had perished. Yet humanity endured, and in secret facilities scattered across the globe, something unprecedented was taking shape. "Project Prometheus is ready," Dr. Reyes announced to the gathered military leaders. The underground Antarctic base hummed with activity as engineers made final adjustments to weapons that would have been unimaginable before the invasion. Commander Wei studied the sleek device before him, a fusion of human innovation and reverse-engineered Krathful technology. "You're certain about the vulnerability?" Reyes nodded. "The data you recovered confirmed it. Krathful quantum communication relies on perfectly synchronized frequency patterns. Disrupt those patterns, and their entire command structure falls apart." Wei finished. The stolen intelligence had revealed a critical flaw in Krathful military design, an over-reliance on instantaneous quantum communications. Their rigid hierarchy couldn't function without it. Meanwhile, in orbit, Supreme Executor Vexthal was summoned to an emergency transmission from the Krathful Emperor himself, a rare occurrence that sent ripples of concern through the command staff. "Explain your failure," the Emperor demanded, his ancient form barely visible in the holographic projection. Vexthal lowered his head in submission. "These humans are anomalous, Your Eminence." They are primitives," the Emperor interrupted. "Yet they have held you at bay for half a stellar cycle. Worse, your obsession has diverted forces from 3 other conquest fronts." Before Vexthal could respond, proximity alarms blared throughout his vessel. On every monitor, the impossible was occurring. Hundreds of small craft were rising from Earth's surface, using flight patterns that defied prediction algorithms. Simultaneously, hyperspace ruptures formed at the edge of the solar system. Concordat vessels emerged, far more than expected, accompanied by ships from previously neutral species. Inspired by human resistance, many have joined their cause. The Emperor observed coldly. "You will correct this error, Executor, or your genetic line will be expunged from Imperial records." The transmission cut as chaos erupted across the Krathful fleet. The Prometheus devices activated, sending precisely calibrated disruption pulses through the quantum communication network. Ship after ship lost coordination with the fleet hierarchy. On Earth, millions of resistance fighters launched synchronized attacks against Krathful ground forces. In orbit, Wei led the space offensive from a new flagship constructed from salvaged Krathful technology. "All vessels, execute Operation Thunderstrike," he commanded. "Unpredictable attack patterns, just as we practiced." For the first time, the Krathful experienced complete tactical confusion. Unable to communicate effectively, and faced with attacks that followed no recognizable pattern, their perfect formations broke apart. When the battle ended 18 hours later, humanity had achieved what 16 other species thought impossible. The Krathful were retreating. As Vexthal's damaged flagship limped toward the edge of the solar system, he received reports of uprisings on previously conquered worlds. The Emperor's displeasure would be severe, but something else troubled the Supreme Executor more deeply. If humans could defeat them here, with primitive technology and sheer determination, what would happen when humanity reached the stars in force? This was a Krathful fortress world, Dr. Reyes whispered, surveying the alien cityscape from the observation deck of the UES Defiance. Commander Wei nodded grimly. "Until yesterday." 1 year after Earth's successful defense, humanity had transformed from prey to predator. The combined Earth Concordat fleet had liberated 3 systems in rapid succession, using tactics that left Krathul strategists bewildered and their perfect formations shattered. The once unstoppable empire was facing something they had never encountered: warfare without patterns, attacks without predictable objectives, and an enemy that grew stronger with each engagement. "The Voxelith ambassador requests your presence in the diplomatic chambers," Wei's adjutant reported. "They've made contact with another subjugated species willing to revolt." Below, on the planet's surface, liberation teams were encountering scenes both horrifying and hopeful. The Krathul maintained vast biological archives, where they preserved specimens of conquered species before engineering their extinction. Many of these archives contained viable populations that could be revived. Reyes had become the unexpected face of human diplomacy, her understanding of Krathul psychology and interspecies linguistics making her uniquely qualified to forge alliances with former Krathul subjects. Where Concordat diplomats had failed for centuries, her direct approach succeeded. "We don't offer protection," she told representatives from the aquatic Narration. "We offer partnership in destroying those who would destroy you." Meanwhile, Supreme Executor Vexthal stood before the Krathul Emperor, his once resplendent battle armor scarred from multiple engagements. "You promised to contain the human contagion," the Emperor hissed, his ancient form barely visible in the shadowed throne room. "Instead, their influence spreads. 3 fortress worlds lost, 7 subject species in open rebellion. The Concordat growing stronger rather than weaker." Vexthal lowered his head. "The humans employ methods that defy conventional analysis. You are relieved of command," the Emperor interrupted. "Return to the Genesis pools for reconditioning." As Imperial guards escorted Vexthal from the chamber, the Emperor summoned his new Supreme Executor, Malkven, a ruthless tactician known for exterminating entire civilizations with methodical precision. "The humans represent an evolutionary dead end," the Emperor declared. "Eliminate them, whatever the cost." Unaware of this development, Wei and Reyes were planning their most ambitious operation yet, the liberation of Concordat homeworlds that had fallen early in the war. Success would fracture the Krathul Empire's inner defense perimeter. "Our intelligence suggests their defenses are formidable," Wei cautioned the assembled commanders from a dozen species. "So were Earth's defenses," replied the Voxelith admiral, its crystalline form pulsing with determined light. "Yet you taught us that no fortress is impregnable when faced with innovation rather than tradition." As the combined fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Wei received a priority communication from Earth. New sensor technology had detected unprecedented Krathul fleet movements. They were consolidating forces for a massive counterattack. The Empire was finally treating humanity as its most significant threat. The war had reached its turning point. "They call it the World Breaker," Dr. Reyes explained, projecting the intercepted Krathul schematics. The assembled War Council, humans and aliens alike, fell silent at the holographic image rotating before them. The superweapon dwarfed anything previously encountered, a massive installation built into the moon orbiting the Krathul homeworld. Its purpose was unmistakable. It can generate a targeted quantum resonance wave capable of disrupting planetary core stability. Reyes continued. "Once fired, Earth would shake itself apart within hours. No evacuation possible." Commander Wei studied the schematics with narrowed eyes. "How long until it's operational?" 2 weeks, maximum," replied the Voxelith intelligence officer. "And it's protected by the entirety of the Krathul home fleet, nearly 3,000 vessels." The silence deepened. Even with their recent victories and growing alliance, they had barely a quarter of that number. "We need another way," Wei said finally. "Dr. Reyes, your diplomatic channels have yielded remarkable results. Are there any potential allies within the Krathul system itself?" Reyes hesitated. "There's a rumor. Dissident Krathul who reject the Empire's extermination protocols." We've intercepted fragmentary communications, suggesting they maintain a hidden presence on the homeworld. Can you contact them? Possibly. But even with their help, reaching the weapon would require penetrating the densest defenses in the galaxy. Wei's expression hardened. Then we'll give them something irresistible to chase. 72 hours later, the largest fleet ever assembled outside of full control emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Imperial system. Every liberated world, every Concordat species, and Earth's entire space force united in a single desperate gambit. Supreme Executor Malkven observed the approaching armada with cold calculation. Predictable. Their only logical move is a direct assault before the Worldbreaker can target their homeworld. What wasn't predictable was Wei's strategy. Instead of a concentrated attack, the Allied fleet fragmented into hundreds of smaller battle groups, each striking at different targets throughout the system. Planetary defenses, shipyards, supply depots, all came under simultaneous attack. They seek to defy our response, Malkven concluded. Maintain defensive concentration around the Worldbreaker. It alone matters. Meanwhile, a small stealth vessel detached from the chaos of battle. Aboard, Wei led a joint strike team of humans and representatives from 7 other species. Dr. Rice accompanied them, her understanding of full communication systems essential to their infiltration. We've received confirmation, she whispered to Wei as they approached the dark side of the full moon. The dissidents will disable the perimeter sensors for precisely 3 minutes. Wei nodded grimly. That's our window. After that. He left the thought unfinished. Everyone aboard understood the stakes. This was likely a one-way mission. As the vessel slipped through the momentary gap in the full defenses, the main battle raged across the system. Thousands of ships exchanged fire in the largest conflict the galaxy had ever witnessed. The fate of Earth, perhaps of all independent life, now rested on a single infiltration team navigating the shadowed corridors of the Worldbreaker. The corridors of the Worldbreaker echoed with alarm sirens as Wei's infiltration team fought their way toward the weapon's core. 3 team members had already fallen: a Vox Lith engineer, a Nair Skull warrior, and Wei's human second in command. The primary firing chamber is ahead, Dr. Rice reported, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. But they've initiated the activation sequence. Through viewport windows, they glimpsed the massive battle beyond. Thousands of ships locked in desperate combat, brief flashes of light marking the deaths of entire crews. The fate of multiple civilizations hung in the balance. How long until it can target Earth? Wei demanded, reloading his weapon. 17 minutes, Rai's reply after consulting her modified Krothol datapad. Wei nodded grimly. Then we have 16 to plant the charges. The final chamber was a cathedral to destruction, a massive spherical space dominated by a pulsing crystalline structure that channeled enough energy to shatter planets. Dozens of Krothol technicians worked at control stations while elite guards maintained a perimeter. We can't fight through that, whispered the Aeroi team member, her gaseous form rippling with concern. Wei's expression remained resolute. We won't have to. He activated his communication device. Now, throughout the Worldbreaker, the hidden Krothol dissidents revealed themselves. Alarms blared as internal systems faltered, lights flickered, and confusion spread among the loyalist forces. In the ensuing chaos, Wei's team charged into the chamber. The explosive charges were placed at critical junctures identified in the schematics. As the last one was set, Supreme Executor Malkven himself entered the chamber, surrounded by his personal guard. Remarkable, the Krothol commander observed, studying Wei with clinical detachment. Your species truly never accepts inevitable defeat. Wei smiled thinly. That's because we define inevitable differently. He triggered the detonator. The explosion chain reaction tore through the Worldbreaker systems. As the infiltration team fled toward their extraction point, the superweapon began to collapse. The quantum resonance wave it had been building turned inward, destabilizing the very moon it was built upon. In orbit, Supreme Executor Malkven's flagship received an unexpected transmission from the Krathul Emperor himself. But it wasn't the Emperor who spoke. It was the leader of the dissidents, announcing the successful palace coup and the Emperor's detainment. The cycle of extinction ends today. The new Krathul leader declared, "All forces, stand down." 3 months later, representatives from over 50 species gathered on Earth for the signing of the Galactic Concord. The former Concordat was dissolved, replaced by a new alliance with humanity playing a central role. Dr. Rice established the Galactic Institute in the ruins of Geneva, dedicated to interspecies cooperation and understanding. Commander Wei led the newly formed peacekeeping forces tasked with stabilizing former Krathul territories. At the ceremony's conclusion, the assembled delegates observed a moment of silence for the billions lost across dozens of worlds. As the memorial lights illuminated the night sky, they formed a constellation in the shape of Earth, the planet whose unbreakable spirit had changed the course of galactic history. Humanity had not merely survived. They had transformed the stars themselves.